Hey everyone, welcome to the Party Chat People's Podcast. I'm Steve. I'm joined by Mikey and Xavi from the Void, as you can see by the visual here if you're watching the video. um, their virtual backgrounds don't work as well as mine, apparently.
No, they don't.
And I don't understand why, because my computer can handle a lot.
It's always worked in the past, as Mikey's been the one with the issue, but I guess...
Well, usually I have the green screen and
Oh, that's true, you do.
Yeah, and I'm not at home, so that's why I have my
Which is
remote.
weird
This
because you
time
just
I'm
have a
showcasing my
big white
teapot.
wall behind you.
But the light isn't consistent, so it'll bleed out. And
This
stuff.
time I'm showcasing my teapot, as
If you
Mikey
hold your
called
hand
it.
up a little bit higher, maybe it'll look like you're holding it.
Yeah, but
Look at my tiny teapot.
Yeah.
exactly.
And then because I'm a total fucking weeb, I
Oh
keep
God!
my practice sword
In the
there
stove.
in the stove handle, so that while I'm working, I can just periodically like do this and help me
Play
think.
real life Fruit Ninja.
Yeah, I'm a weeb. Look, I'm a weeb.
like high school edgelord level.
No. I was never
happening
an edgelord, but I was always a weeb.
Ah, you look like one now.
Edgelords. I would be an edgelord if I did this in a professional setting while I was someone's boss. That would make me a fucking edgelord.
I think it's open for interpretation.
All right, but we're gonna actually
the guy
talk
who
about,
keeps it in the kitchen in the
we're gonna
stove
actually talk
where you
about
cook food.
video games, possibly some things.
Okay.
Well, I think you're on brand for what we're going to talk about.
Exactly.
That's true.
You know, today's a little special one-shot episode, a little short discussion about some Ghost of Tsushima Legends, which is the multiplayer update, which looks neat.
And it has some single-player stuff.
And I do need to try it, but I haven't. Because I didn't know anybody tried it yet.
And I jumped into it when it launched that day just to like poke about and like have it updated, just so that it's ready to go. Played through the intro stuff and did like a mission or two. Then me and Mikey synced up one day and went through a handful of story missions. And then since then I've dipped back into it periodically to do a few missions here and there.
How much content have you seen so far? It's a free update.
Yep.
Right. So how much content is in this, and how much have you seen so far?
It's appropriate for a free update, and it doesn't mean that it's not excellent content. I think this is actually pretty excellent content, but it is appropriate that it's free. Right. Just in terms of the typical time investment that you kind of expect, and in terms of like what they spent effort on, this is worth something. This is worth some money, but I'm pretty sure the play here is to really extend the conversation about this game. And we're talking about a game that came out in June. Right?
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool, actually. And whether this, allows Sucker Punch to basically just experiment and eventually do something that's meatier and costs money on this game or future games, I don't know. I don't care. This is good stuff. But in terms of like, I've almost tapped out the content from the perspective that I've done all the story missions.
Okay.
I've done most of the survival maps up to like successfully doing like the full number of waves, right?
Right.
And so what's left for me is to just like grind out to have gear that will be helpful for the raid, which I might not even really do until it's like almost raid time, which I don't know when that's coming out. But
so when you say raid, you're talking about the like a big dungeon-esque,
right? So
encounter.
Yeah, Mikey, maybe you want to talk about the story and how it kind of looks like it's going to lead up to.
Yeah. So I believe it. So the way the story takes place is that throughout the regular gameplay, the regular story mode, there's this legend system, or there's a lot of lore and tales, Japanese mythology. So you learn about these different figures in Japanese mythology. And basically this demon Onibaba is coming to destroy the world, or the usual stuff. and your multiplayer playthrough is story of ghosts and how they thwarted Onibaba and his various minions, and the ultimate encounter will be the raid against Onibaba. So there's 8 or 9 chapters, I don't remember, of multiplayer co-op, 2-player co-op missions. There's a bronze, silver,
I think
and
it's
gold
9.
system. Xavi and I did the bronze system, but I actually went back and I've been doing all the gold versions. And basically, the
Yeah,
gold.
and you'll be appropriately leveled for
Yeah,
silver by the time you finish the story stuff.
So
yeah,
would you equate this to kind of like how Mass Effect's multiplayer worked,
yeah,
where you
almost.
choose your quote unquote difficulty before you enter the
Yep.
stage?
It's probably the
Almost
closest.
explicitly, it feels like
Yeah.
Mass Effect multiplayer,
Okay.
in the sense of each of your challenges have ranks, you have maps, you go through it. As the ranks get higher, it's no longer just, oh, you have to shoot this person. Specifically with the gold zombie, and you probably haven't gotten
I
up to
haven't
it.
dabbled with it too much now.
So they really gin up the missions. So there's 3 extra challenges in each level.
Mm,
There's either a affinity challenge, so one early challenge, Steve. Oh, and here's what one thing that's really great about the missions. Every story mission has like a gimmick, and not in a bad way, but like in a good way. So like in the first mission, you had enemies that were linked, and Zavi and I had to kill them within 5 seconds. In the
Okay.
second mission, there were these magicians that, as long as they were alive, everyone in her area would sort of regen their health super fast.
yeah.
The
Gotcha.
third one we did is there were Tsukiyomi, Amaterasu, and Susano, which is storm, sun, and moon, like shrines.
Okay.
You had to activate them, and whatever your affinity towards, you would do like appropriate damage against whatever enemy was that color. So yellow,
Yeah.
purplish, and green.
Maybe
And
even a little bit above like standard damage
yeah,
for like the
probably.
type and like the
Okay.
levels.
Yeah,
And then if you aren't in the affinity, like it takes
takes
some
forever.
work, like an annoying amount of time, right? So when
You
you layer that
literally
on
have
top
to go.
of,
Yeah.
other high damage dealing people and all that, you can see how it's going to require coordination.
Yeah. So
Right.
in the gold versions, it takes that and every area, because there's 3 areas for each story mission, and it'll sort of remix it. So I've encountered so far like one area, they'll put one of those affinity shrines where you have to complete a jumping puzzle in order for the gate for you to get to the next area. Then there's another challenge which you have to get one of Gyozen's tales. Gyozen is basically the narrator for everything that you do. As you go through these gates, he's sitting in the corner and he sort of sets up the story for you. And then
Mm.
the third one is every last mission, Gyozen has like a little shrine and you have to pray with him with your partner. And then that last area will augment it. So
And that's
one,
Okay.
optional.
huh?
And that's optional too.
Yeah,
So,
that's optional.
which is notable because story mode and like one difference from Mass Effect, for example, is that survival is 4-player co-op, but story is just 2-player co-op.
Yeah,
So like, I think that's kind of vital in a
yeah,
way that's worth talking about.
yeah,
Like maybe
yeah,
I'll get more into it in a minute, but like
yeah,
just the fact that if you get paired off with someone who's a dum dum
Mhm.
yeah,
and you're on silver, you're still fine
yeah,
because you optionally can do the curse and
yeah,
that'll give you better rewards at the end.
yeah.
But it is optional.
Yeah. And there's one more augment. There's an Oni chest. And if you open it, and which is also optional, both of the players have to like
Yeah.
lift each side of the chest. Special, the hardest enemies in the game that are sort of mystical, they could like teleport. They appear, a group of them, and you have to beat them in order to get that extra bonus as well. So when you play it on gold, you actually are in for a quite a challenge.
Nice.
I've reached max level already with one of my ghosts. They have 4 classes. The hunter, which is arrow based, their specialties with arrows. The Ronin, they have healing and spiritual powers. They can summon like a ghost dog. The samurai, which is, samurai has heavy armor. Their
Standard
special is
tank archetype.
Yeah, tank,
Because
and then
the key ability is like I think what distinguishes them a lot.
yeah, and then the assassin where you can sneak around, and a lot of your equipment they put points into different sort of areas you would different attributes that you would find from the main game. So
Yeah.
my stealth damage, my physical damage, my headshot damage. If I do a headshot, I can have a chance of refunding an arrow.
Hmm.
When I go in a smoke bomb, my smoke bomb may disorient and heal, or it may poison and heal. So
Yeah.
they're putting in quite a bit of things into these different classes to make them distinct, to
Okay.
make
And I
them
can see
feel,
how this
yeah.
could, and I can see how this could definitely like escalate into a rich raid encounter,
Mm,
um, and how like different things might be really necessary because they're laying the groundwork for teaching you certain things.
Hmm.
So if you're someone who's just gonna quick play survival to like kill a day's, kill time after a day of work or whatever, right?
Right.
Maybe you go up to gold for the challenge. I don't know if gold on survival is also going like does that also put in like layers of complexity into the combat, Mikey?
No, but what happens is, and what you had pointed out early in the when we played, I don't know if you remember, Steve, like you gain stances in the single player.
Yeah.
So when you go into multiplayer, each sword has a one stance, but those
Some of
stances
them have two.
to your rarity. So
Hmm.
as you go up in rarity, they'll add in another stance. I haven't seen a sword that
Or
more than two stances at a time, though.
yeah, me neither. Yeah,
Even legendary ones.
gotcha.
However, that's where you would talk to your partners and say, "Hey, I have a sword that is
Exactly.
against shields and spears. Is
And
yours
it
against brutes and so?"
So would you
and it
say
makes it
that
so that like playing your role can be a big deal, which is actually kind of nuanced. So like very simply, me going in there with a wind katana means that when I see someone who's a spear guy, especially if I see him going after my
Yeah,
partner, I'm gonna like hone in on just being like, no spear guy, I'm gonna fuck you up.
yeah,
Um, just because it's a pain in the ass to parry spear guys if you don't have a wind katana.
so do
yeah.
you see that they're putting these kind of layers of objective play with mechanics and stuff into it? Do you think that'll feed into the raid?
Well,
Kind of
definitely.
like how Destiny does it when they feed you like a new mechanic. It's like, well, that's
And
going to be in the
Yeah,
raid.
and they're
That's going to be in
using the
game content.
story to actually teach you the fundamentals. That's what I
yeah.
think is really freaking cool.
And also, I think, like I said, each mission sort of has a gimmick. I think it would be very silly, and especially as I've done more missions, some of those sort of gameplay, those encounters repeat themselves.
Hmm.
I mean, if they throw all of that away just to make something new that doesn't work, that seems silly to me. I
Yeah,
think
I hope the raid is not
synthesize,
something that
yeah,
has too much discovery involved
yeah, I think it's going to
because
synthesize a lot of the gameplay that they've been introducing over the story. They'll
right,
probably even input there in one of the missions. There was a survival. There was a what is it, King of the Hill, where it was just like,
right,
oh, well, I've done this. I know what I need to do right now.
yep.
So I do feel like it's going to be something where, all right, these story missions were let's play around with them. Now we're going to give you the expert, of like what we actually realized for this
Yeah.
challenge.
I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so that we can switch over to some gameplay here.
Yeah.
Um, and people can take a look at like what it kind of looks like in action. It looks like the single player game in large part, but you can see there's some tonal differences I think that are worth acknowledging. I like how it feels distinct,
Mhm.
and it's all truly holistic, right? Like the if the single player is what we're to believe in universe is like what actually happened, Legends is how this society has memorialized the events.
I was going to say, yeah, you could make it
Mhm.
seem like, and even the way I think they stage it is that these are the stories that have
Hmm.
come down for how these things
Yeah.
have happened, right?
And so the first part of the story that's kind of funny is there's not one ghost because obviously one person couldn't have stood against the Mongols, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So
So
I think that's
it's like the story of the ghosts that saved Tsushima,
yeah.
Mhm.
you
And
know.
so
And I
I
think
think
that's how like I think it mirrors something in real life that shows like, Legends gain popularity and some level of mysticism to them
Yeah,
when they
yeah.
seem like
A
something
superhuman feat.
insurmountable and super.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so it's really cool because I think that's kind of funny and fascinating for a lot of reasons. So the single player game, you only play as one dude, and he is kind of a jack of all trades, and that's one of the central tensions of the story. Actually, is like here's this dude, uh, he was raised to be a samurai, but the Mongols don't play fair, so he fights fire with fire,
Right.
and like um, and so like that is an interesting story that you can attach to as a single player story. But then with Legends, they've really thought through how to mold this into the right context for the purpose of a story.
Mhm.
And I think that's really cool because that actually feeds into the gameplay very meaningfully. Because if you're interested in a story, you go straight to the story mode, and it turns out they're actually tutorializing what's to come in the
Yeah.
form of the raid. Honestly, if the raid is done right now, I still think the right call is to actually like dull it out in this fashion, in the sense of like the community kind of grows together in that way. And I think it's
Mm.
smart and intentional.
Yeah.
They're probably still working on it, but I'm just saying, like, regardless, because it creates a certain level with you and your friends, since it's inherently co-op, to be like, oh, we've played the game a bunch, okay, and then the raid comes out, and you go, oh, okay, we've been preparing for this,
Yeah.
and that's really cool and nice. But also, when I've heard you guys talk about the issues in Destiny, a theme that comes up is that the best part is the raid, and everything else
Mhm.
is homework in some ways.
Yes.
And I feel that way about the end game of Division Two in some regards. Um,
I'd say Division 2 mirrors it pretty well.
yeah, I dropped
I
off
don't
a
know
little
what
bit.
their end game is like now, but I know back in the day, it's essentially felt the same. It's like, here's all the mechanics that you're going to need to know for the end game, and then we're just going to, this is where we're going to keep all the cool stuff.
Well, I don't know if you
Right.
guys are speaking out of turn though, because we haven't seen what they're gonna do. So what if
Sure,
Right.
sure. We are. I mean, but I just wanted to. I wanted to say that. Sorry,
I
what?
mean, I mean, you can glean from like this kind of like gameplay loop as far as multiplayer standard, and
I
then
don't know,
having an
Steve. Think
an
about
end game
Destiny
raid.
and the fun we had with it, and then the raid came out, and we're like,
What the
whoa.
hell?
Right.
Well, but I
But I'm
think
saying, from the standpoint of like knowing, because there's not really much to know until the raid actually comes out.
sure.
Yeah.
You can't speak on it, but you can speak on what's done similar things.
Yeah, and so what I'll speak to is my hope that they have successfully paid attention to that zeitgeist of what it's like for people who make raids and what the community feels like, right? They're in that conversation, but they haven't actually Sucker Punch produced a multiplayer thing, but they've managed to turn this into their own like take on like how they're going to set people up for such an experience, and it
Mhm.
feeds off of the single player campaign because you've already mastered, if you've played the single player campaign, certain parts of how basics work, and then you play a role in the co-op that's a little bit actually, um, you've removed some capabilities relative to single player for the purpose of having it be that each person has to play a role, and then because they're teaching us things that are new and distinct from single player throughout the story mode of Legends, now we've learned that stuff, and then we can go into a raid. I hope that they don't throw stuff that feels so obtuse that it's like too much discovery, like I said before. I can see them having a perfectly satisfying raid with bronze, silver, and gold difficulties based on the existing mechanics.
Mhm.
And if so, like, that's a grand slam as far as I'm concerned, because this would introduce a different model for this relative to, versus a Destiny, versus a Division 2, that just feels so much more streamlined and to the point, and like we're going to use the design of the grind to teach you stuff that is relevant, and we're not going to waste your time with anything else.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that definitely became a issue with Destiny in the sense of like I said, and I think I might have mentioned this to Steve, that I never understood why Destiny's design wasn't more holistic if the raid was the end game content. Why wasn't it that, like you were saying, why why save all of the variability and all the innovation for this, 1 hour thing that you have to gather up,
Yeah.
7 of your other friends, rather than input little pieces of that design throughout your game, throughout your campaign, so people go, oh, that was a fun little like thing that I did. Oh, that was another fun little thing.
Hmm.
So that when you actually have the raid, instead of going like, oh, let's look for group, oh, this guy sucks, he doesn't know what to do.
Right.
Everybody has done this. Now it's
And
time
I
to
think,
practice mastery with it.
right. And I think that it's a question of like of appropriate scale. So with Destiny and Division 2, um, I think speaking more directly to Division 2 and from what I've heard from you guys on Destiny, I think that those games are lesser games because they're chasing a live service, whale-oriented, or maybe not
Not
whale-oriented. Maybe
whale. I
that's
wouldn't say
too
whale.
harsh. But
Time.
attention and
Yeah.
time-oriented. Like we need to get as much time and as much attention from players as possible. And that means like scheduling them to do stuff every day and all that stuff. And then there's fundamental things in the design that's just like, let's make them do relatively boring shit every day in order to get to the good stuff. What I like to call eating your vegetables. And I fucking hate it. And I have no patience for it.
That's where I think the comparison to Mass Effect works better,
Right.
because this is more like that. Like the multiplayer was added on not as
Right.
something to force you to play, that you
Yeah.
felt like you had to play just to get whatever you needed out of it. It was an additional thing that was optional,
Yeah.
and maybe a fun divergence from the normal gameplay loop.
And there's an honesty to the scale of what they're doing, where it's like 4 people. That is a scale where it's like probably your friends and you can probably coordinate
Mhm.
effectively.
Mhm.
But like, in some sense, people are sometimes they can be chasing WoW, I think. And even WoW has scaled back from when they used to have like 40-man raids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and like that has its own thing, that has its own place. I'm sure I've never done it, but I'm sure it's like a different scale of satisfaction and accomplishment when you've coordinated 40 fucking people to do something like that.
Well, it's interesting you bring up WoW, because they started in that model of 40 people, right? Then they brought it back to 2 separate difficulty levels. You had a 10-player difficulty level and a 25-player difficulty level.
Mm,
Now everything's the same, but you can go in with 10 people, you can go in with 25 people.
and it
All
just
the
scales.
loot table is the exact same. It's just a matter of the amount of people that you bring in.
And that's good because
So they've
that
made
makes
it
it more
more
accessible.
accessible.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Because some
the
people want to go for like, I'm organizing 40 people, let's
right.
go. And some people are like, no, I have 3 friends and I hate people.
Yeah.
And either one is fine because we have the tools as game designers and so on to like to just scale that shit more or
That's
less.
that's kind of where I've been with Destiny in recent years. It's like I don't want to meet new people to learn to raid with. I want to raid with my friends, but you know, only 4 of them play now. You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it makes that leap a little harder. But
Yeah. So yeah, I think
have they said that this raid is going to be 4 people?
I think so.
yeah, I don't think it's going to be more than 4. And to be honest with you, just thinking about the way the gameplay loop is and the responsibilities of other players and what they want you to focus on as far as mastery, even in the harder sections of survival, there's many times where it's like, okay, you want us to split into groups of 2, or this section of, all right,
Yeah.
one person clearly has to handle this and they have to have some sort of mastery of the combat and their
Mm-hmm.
skills.
Right.
I think when you get a little bit above that, and given even when it comes to the story missions, like Xavier said, I've been going on gold, and there were some hard ones in gold, but I never felt like, oh my gosh, I wish I just had another player. It felt
Sure.
appropriately scaled.
Right,
What we're
because
trying to do.
it's easy to double the numbers, I think. And when you go from story missions that you have 2 people, and there's a high probability that you have one other friend who appreciates and has played this game, you both
Mhm.
get the free update, and you both dick around in the story. And then if you do that, and that's your one person that you regularly play with together, then it's kind of trivial to take those 2 people, go into a survival game, and then you're navigating 3 points. So there's always a little bit of tension about like you have to defend 3 points simultaneously. So there's a lot of running around. But if you have 2 parties of 2 people, it's actually pretty easy to coordinate. You guys go point A, I'll go point B without talking. You just do it on your own separate party chats, right? And so like Division 2 similarly does that actually, because its normal mission group size is 4 and its raid size is 8. And it specifically designates a group A and a group B. It just in the HUD, it doesn't restrict you, but it does mean that during the very natural organic parts of the map where there's a section for one team and a section for the other team, you'll just kind of organically be like, okay, I'm going here, I'm going there. So I think that like there's some principles at play here in terms of like doubling the size here and there, like where you can do that kind of safely. But when you go into larger scales and things like that, and you just expect people to just figure it out or use matchmaking to figure it out, there's so much possibility for one half of the team being significantly different in terms of skill level from you, and now no one's having a good fucking time.
Yeah, I will say though that I've tried like the nightmare missions, and you're kind of already getting to the part of like you'll hear someone go, "You're not a Ronin, bro," and then disconnect.
That comes with just the territory of multiplayer gaming. It's the same thing in Destiny of like, oh, you didn't have Gallarhorn, so we're not going to take you.
Yeah, and
there's a level of gatekeeping that gamers do in multiplayer when it comes to PvE based multiplayer.
Right.
Because they want to succeed without challenge.
There's a certain kind of prisoner's dilemma problem. So like the best matchmaking system in the world with with millions and millions and millions of players would be able to make sure that you actually have a good team balance, right? You actually have someone whose loadout for the mission is like for a healer, and whose loadout is for a tank, and so on and so forth, right? But like that doesn't exist. That's the ideal. Even in Overwatch, which has, I'm sure, millions of concurrent players, or maybe not at one time. Anyway, it has a shitload of people. Like you have a problem of there being too many people queuing for DPS. So if you want to queue for DPS itself, it's your only way to actually get the DPS role. You're probably looking at a queue on average of like 5 minutes relative to the other two, which is like 1 or 2 minutes, right?
Right.
And so like you take that problem, you apply it to these kind of games, and it's like you're going to get matched with someone that doesn't match your profile of how you want to play. In Division 2, what I specifically hated is people who would just have this rushdown style where they had self heals and they just had like explosive shit, and they would just want to like run through a mission as fast as possible because they're just grinding for gear.
Right.
I like to play with all of the directives on, particularly the one that limits your ammo, because those people rage quit and it's fucking hilarious. But that's just another example of I have a way that I want to play, and people who matchmake me are not going to like the game world that I'm inviting them into.
Right.
And so like, bringing it back to Ghost of Tsushima, I think that they're controlling that just by being a modest fucking game. And just being like, this is not, everything in one chance. It's not a live service game per se. It's a reasonable co-op extension of what they've built before. And that's sufficient, and it's great.
Right.
Yeah. And to be honest, I think like I probably will have like another week of it, and I'm probably done, and I'm done. I'm satisfied.
But even when I do reach that moment, which I think I'm almost there, I could still definitely see this being something that I jump back into if there's still a decent community to matchmake with, or if I just have one friend who I want to dick around with.
There's 3 classes for you to upgrade, so when you transfer over your equipment, so it makes it easier for the other 3 classes when you're ready. So I started playing with I think the Ronin or the Hunter just briefly, and I'm just like, I kind of really like the Assassin. I didn't have a taste for anyone else, just me personally, so I kind of stopped. But then I went back to the Assassin, and I was like, I can still sort of get some better stuff here and there and call it a day. So I definitely think like next week will probably be the last week I play. Plus, everything comes out, so there'll definitely be more on the plate to get into. But I'll definitely pop back into the raid just to see what's going on, and experiencing how they, all the practice we had with our homework, how it leads to the big test.
Yeah, right. I think it'd be fun to try to ask ourselves, how much would we pay for this?
I feel like this is
As a solely multiplayer experience for what it offers in the Legends update.
Yeah, pretend that you could get this as like a standalone thing, right? Because I think it's to be clear, it's already an inherently fucked question because if you charge money for it, you wouldn't have the same player base, right?
Right.
Nonetheless, I would pay $20 for this.
I would say $20 is probably a reasonable.
I was gonna say 25, but yeah.
And they have store aspects to it where you gain currency through the gameplay and you buy stuff that way.
They have an economy, but it's not
Yeah.
like
There's no money.
a
It's not
store. There's no
monetary.
microtransactions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah. 20 to 25 is probably a fair
Yeah.
price for what it offers.
Mhm.
But if this is like a precursor to a route they may go down in the future, I could see having to add a lot more in terms of content. And then also they would probably add in that microtransaction store just for the sake of continuing the revenue.
Well, there's a difference between trying to make a live service game and trying to make a product with a definite end.
Right.
Like this update, including the raid, is something that has a definite end, and I would pay $20 for it, and and so on. We gave our numbers.
Gotcha.
If something was trying to be a live service game, that comes with certain expectations, and I would want something that would be a more monthly model for something like that, that would feel like a battle pass or some such thing that would
Right.
feel good and appropriate. But yeah, I just think it's interesting to think through because I don't think that this becomes free without like this being a big hit and probably Sony's publishing, I would say. Nonetheless, though, like I really hope that this has some successful numbers that they can bring to GDC and share with the community, and people can realize that there's like a viable thing here, particularly by crafting a much more humble experience.
Yeah.
And it's not a
I'd
live
be interested to
service.
see numerically what it did for the longevity of the game. Because I could imagine people beat it pretty quickly.
Oh yeah.
And to see what kind of numbers it brought back, and of that, people that completed it, people that didn't. Like, there's a lot of data that'd be interesting to see from this kind of like experiment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One thing that is a kind of offset though, like the survival missions, they're pretty long. I want to say from
That is true.
bronze. Yeah, from bronze till gold. Bronze will sort of niche you on the half an hour side of things. Silver, there's a definite like 40 to 45. And when I do gold waves, I'm definitely in there for like 59, 55 minutes.
Which I think can serve as like a choose your time investment sort of thing.
Yeah.
Hold on. So what I was going to say is that, but then when you do the story missions, that time is almost cut in half.
Yeah, it's 15 to 20.
That's kind of why I really fell so deep into the Mass Effect multiplayer, is because the time investment wasn't huge.
Yeah.
So if you were going in bronze, you knew it was going to be a quick, maybe 5 to 10 minutes area. But if you're going into platinum, you know it was going to be longer than that. But you could kind of plan out based on how you were feeling, and it still kind of felt like you were working towards your goal of your next pack.
And you can tell that this is something that Sucker Punch thinks about, because the single player shares this too in its like mission structure. There's predictable lengths to the types of missions that you're going to take on. So when you jump into the game, you can do anything from dicking around in the open world for 10 minutes, which is not terribly fun in my opinion, to doing like a regular mission, side mission, which take you 10-15, all the way through to like the Mystic Tales, which can take a long time to like.
I think that's something interesting that maybe developers need to start looking at is, as and I say like, earlier gamers, from like our generation start getting older and have less and less time to put into games. You kind of want to know what you're getting into time-wise before you like start playing, because I know I spend time thinking about what I'm going to play because of how long I want to play and what kind of realistic goals I can get done in whatever game I'm trying to decide to play.
Well,
Like,
Steven, hope you get a PlayStation 5 because remember, on that little bar, it'll tell you exactly that.
Oh, how long you've
well,
been playing or what?
Yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah.
it's not about how long I've been playing. It's more like what I can get. Like right now,
Well,
Watch
no, it
Dogs.
Well,
tells
it
you
needs to be a
specifically.
satisfying session,
Yeah.
Right, that's what
and
I
that's a
mean. So
game
like when I
design
think of
challenge.
what we'll talk about next time we record is Watch Dogs Legion, is jumping into it. I don't know how long I'm going to be playing it because the mission structure and the side mission structure and the recruitment structure are so kind of open-ended to what you do as soon as you jump in the game. You could be there for an hour, you can be there for 10 minutes. It's really hard to kind of gauge it. But in
Yeah.
other games like, Hades most recently that Stacy's playing, or, something like this, Ghost of Tsushima Legends, like you kind of have an idea before you even jump in how long you're going to spend and if you'll want to get 2, 3, 4 missions in.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm excited about the PlayStation 5 because it does have that system, the hint system or the log system, what they call it, where if you have a task, you can go to the task and it says, hey, this is going to take about 10 minutes.
That whole thing, yeah.
This is going to take about 12 minutes. Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, I hope that the game engines catch on and make that kind of stuff easier
And
to.
I mean, I think if any company we would expect that from, it would be from first party games. So, the next Ghost of Tsushima or whatnot.
For sure.
Have that.
It's also the sort of thing that if they're not already on it, Microsoft can iterate on their OS and put it out as a feature.
Yeah.
And
It would be
then we'll have
cool
ubiquity.
too if you
Right.
make your own customized like task list. So say like, hey, I have 30 minutes of gaming today. Let me see where I'm in this story. Oh, this takes 10, this takes 10, this takes 10. This stays like in the corner of my screen. I do those two things. Oh, you've done it, and
Yeah.
I gotta go do something. Or I gotta, take care of dinner. And that's
So
Yeah.
wait, they built a to-do list into the PS5?
yeah,
Sounds like
That's
it,
what
kinda.
that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Because
it's
if that's
built
the
into
case, then
OS.
that's actually it's weird, but it's also kind of neat.
Uh-huh.
Because there's
Go
that
and
part of you
watch
that's like, well, here's my to-do list for video games this week. Like, here's my video game homework.
Yeah.
But on the other side, it's like, well, this is what I was aiming to do in a certain amount of time, and this will tell me. It's like the completionist tracking side of it. That like, it's seeing the check mark pop up on something being done, right?
Yeah.
Like any video game you play that has the list of objectives going on for it, and then seeing them check off.
Yeah.
It
having
makes you feel productive.
having common systems at the operating system level to like organize your playtime.
Yeah.
That's actually
I'll send you the OS review. I think it was a PlayStation 5. It went through. It's not long. As soon as we're done, I'll send it to you. You can watch it. It's like really quick, and they go like into little
But
big.
that'll be a preview of when we eventually, review the PlayStation 5 launch. Going back to Ghost for a second, I want to touch super quickly on the fact that the Legends update is not strictly introducing the Legends mode. There are actually some single player improvements. The biggest one is that now when you select between your armors, that armor is tied to a loadout of charms and cosmetics. So switching between things and like actually keeping the role playing going and whatnot is just easier now, which is actually kind of a big deal to me. Like gold standard here. Games should do this, like Horizon should do this, and Horizon 2 should do this, and so on. And that's really nice. There's also New Game Plus, which has lethal plus difficulty, and all of the things have like a plus on them to boost the enemies a little bit, which gives you incentive for like a few more upgrades, just so that you can replay the story and like still be engaging in an economy that's kind of interesting. It's a good update. It's a novel, good New Game Plus for this game. Which I know some people that like don't buy a game for $60 without a New Game Plus, and that's not a, that's not an obstacle anymore. It's nice that they threw that in there too.
Okay. Yeah, I think that about wraps us up on this topic.
Yep.
Definitely interested to see where the raid goes. I may check that out, and if you guys are going to play it any time this week, let me know. I'll try to jump on and see if I can get in so I can get a little more insight into how it all works and how it feels as far as entertaining multiplayer.
Yep.
like bite-sized stuff.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good.
right.
Who wants to take us out?
Mikey, take us out.
All right, you can catch us on our socials. This will be our Legends, Ghost of Tsushima Legends.
One shot.
One shot episode. I was gonna say bite size, but bite size is definitely not bite size.
Trying to create branding here.
It's still like 30 something minutes, maybe 40,
Yeah.
probably bordering on 40 minutes.
So much.
Almost a whole episode.
We can rap for hours. That's how this is.
Hey man, there's a lot of content to talk about in the gaming sphere.
All right. Late is.
Goodbye.